work for Juniper Networks, and I'm responsible for our security portfolio.
Well, Michael, lots of big stories, of course, here at Infosec 2013, one of which is the new body of research that you're unveiling at the show this week. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so we did some research with Callahan, and we started to ask customers, what do you think about security? How many breaches do you have? Are your solutions working or not? And it was interesting. We saw over 56% of the respondents said that the current solutions they have, they're just not up to the task.
So talk us through some of the results of the survey. What were the threats that you identified? Were you talking to individuals or talking from the behalf of organizations? Talk us through some of the data.
So we were talking to individuals, but they represented organizations that were of all sizes, so small, medium, and large. And we asked them what their biggest threats were. It was interesting that over half of them said they felt their biggest threat was coming in off web applications. Even more interesting was that over 32% of the respondents said that they've had more than one breach in the last year, which is incredible if you think about it. So it's not just that they had one, they all admitted that they had one. It was that 32% had more than one, so that could have been 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, which shows that the problem's not going away, and as the data would suggest, the current solutions just aren't getting the job done.
The frequency of threats perhaps increasing as well?
It could be the frequency of threats. It could also be very targeted threats. So when you see the success rate going up like it has, it means that people are being very sophisticated, where they're not going just for a broad-based approach to attacks. They're being very, very targeted, very specific on what they're going after and why.
Have you found, talking to the businesses that you spoke to, that they were taking security issues seriously before they were attacked? Or was it the attack that gave them the reason to go and get themselves?
Well, it's interesting that you would say that, because everyone knows about it, right? So everyone knows that there's an issue out there and there are security threats and they need to protect from them or protect against them. What really creates change is when it happens to them. So when something bad happens to them. Now there are a few industries and a few organizations that have to be proactive, and I would say the government, the finance industry, they're always trying to be ahead and be proactive, so they're taking steps to make sure that they aren't breached. But then there's the companies that think, well, nothing has happened, so until something does, I'm not going to take some sort of action. And then when something does happen, it's a lot of action really fast.
And what were the risks that you identified? Was it mainly theft of data or identities? What were the sort of risks?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. So there's IP being stolen. So if it happens to be in an industry where something is very attractive to someone, you'll see people go in and try to steal that IP. And maybe it's a pharmaceutical formula. Maybe it's the plans for some sort of new piece of equipment. So you see that. You also see it financially motivated. So there was a recent attack in Bank of the West where $900,000 was stolen in just a couple of minutes. So it's moved from, the threat generally has moved from fame, which if you remember years and years ago, it was just how can I get someone to click on an email attachment so that they get a mass mailer going? And now it's very much either some sort of hacktivism, or it's financially motivated, or it's socially motivated. So they're doing something to make a point.
And of course, one of the stories here at Infosec this year is the risks and threats towards mobile and mobile working within organizations. Right. What were your findings in that area?
Yeah, so it continues to be a bigger issue. And we identified it as an industry, as a security industry, years ago, that the mobile threat was going to be a big problem. It's starting to become real for people now, because the mobile devices are mini computers, where in the past, what was on your phone was your contact book, and very little data was stored on your phone. So it wasn't like you had an earnings press release or a PowerPoint that was your strategy on your phone. Some people may, but most of the time you didn't. So if you lost the phone or someone took control of it, kind of minimal risk. Now, because more data and more information is being stored on the phone, it's a much bigger risk. And the fact that you can have the ability to VPN in off these mobile devices, now you can actually get access to the network. So people are now seeing that mobile device is a legitimate and a real threat.
What's the attitude out there towards people who have been attacked, towards where the responsibility lies going forward for dealing with threats? For instance, talking about mobile, is the attitude out there that it should be more the responsibility of mobile providers, handset providers, or are people accepting some of the responsibility themselves? What's the attitude?
Yeah, well, I think the attitude is slowly changing, where I think in the past, the end user felt little responsibility. I think they just thought, it's my device, I'm going to figure out a way to connect to a network and be what comes. Now I think they're seeing that by not taking some responsibility, it's not only impacting their organization, it's impacting them personally. So if something happens to the organization, it could affect their livelihood. So I think it's this combination of people that are taking more responsibility, from the service provider to the organization to the individual.
And using the sort of trends and patterns from that survey and looking forward to the future, how do you think things are going to change within security? What do you think we're going to be stood here talking about at Infosec 2015, for instance?
Well, one thing that's remained constant is the attacker. So what we've seen over time is the devices have changed, the infrastructure has changed and how you push information out to people. The threats have changed, from mass mailers to SQL injections or cross-site scripting. And those particular things they've remained pretty consistent. The threats, or they've changed. The thing that has remained consistent is the attacker. So the attacker is what's the key thing to focus on. And so we're making a lot of investment to identify the attacker, knowing that the infrastructure is going to continue to change, the endpoints are going to continue to become mobile, the threats are going to continue to be used, they're going to continue to evolve, but that attacker being consistent, if we can identify the attacker, we'll be able to significantly increase the efficacy of your security by knowing the attacker and blocking that attacker. And I think we'll be talking about the attacker for a while.
Yeah, it seems to be something that you can kind of get lost in thinking about, and you can kind of forget that most of these threats and attacks, there is a human being behind it at the origin in the end, and putting a profile of who that person is can help us to deal with them.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exactly right, and that's where we've invested a lot of time and a lot of effort, is identifying that attacker and what's their MO and how do they approach an attack, and if we can identify them, we can stop them. Now it doesn't mean that there isn't some automated reconnaissance going on, because there's some technologies that hackers will use that will do some scanning and understand who's more vulnerable or less, and that can be very automated. But when they get to a specific attack, because they're going for they're trying to break into a bank and get money, they're trying to steal IP, they're trying to do some sort of make some sort of social statement, there's a real specific pattern that the attackers have, and if we can identify them by that pattern, we can then be more effective in blocking. And we're doing that. We're doing that with a product of ours called Web App Secure, which integrates to Spotlight, which is a global attacker intelligence database.
Yeah, of course, Spotlight Secure being your new product here at Infosec 2013. Give us a bit of a background on how it all came about. What was the gap in your offerings that led to the development of this product?
Well, so what we found, which was backed up by the Poneman study, was that more and more people were concerned about their web applications. So when we looked around for how do we address that, and we found some real interesting technology in Mykonos, a company we acquired about almost a year and a half ago. We brought them into the Juniper family, developed the product more, and now have a shipping product called Web App Secure, which uses intrusion deception technology to track and trap hackers. So as they're trying to manipulate a web application, we start tracking them, and we start laying little tar traps for them to walk into, so we can identify them. Once we identify them, we take that information and send it up to a global database in the cloud that's of all of the attackers, so that when that attacker decides to go to a new site, we already know about them, and if they're using Juniper security solutions, they'll be blocked from attacking that new site.
Well, more information, of course, on that on Juniper's website,
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
That's right.
But thank you very much for joining us.
All right, thank you.